Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Well, today is kind of a good news, bad news sort of day. So the bad news is that the starter battery on my Ford Transit, I think, has finally given up the ghost. There's been several times this week where I went to go start it and it just wouldn't start. I had to jump start it a couple of times. I think this is actually a problem with the Ford Transits. I think if you go look at some forums, you'll see that they apparently tend to drain the battery, and the battery in this guy is actually 5 years old, so I guess it's not the worst. It's probably time for a new battery regardless of the make and model of the car. So that's what I want to do today. Let's get the battery out. In fact, I've already done that. Let me show you real quick. I pulled the battery out. It was not actually a very easy process. In fact, if you're interested, feel free to check out these two videos. I've got detailing how to get the battery out of the car. But anyway, I just wanted to show you, this is a stock OEM battery that came with the Transit. You can kind of see it's a 48H6. That's, I think, the group and the size of the battery. This is your old school standard flooded lead acid battery. It's got 610 cold cranking amps, but it's basically dead. So what I ended up doing was upgrading. So I went ahead and upgraded to a AGM battery. So this one is it's a 70 amp hour battery. I think it's got, let's take a gander here. You can see it's got, yeah, a little bit more cranking amperage. So cold cranking amps, yeah, 760. So it's a bit of an upgrade. Mostly I like the fact that it's AGM rather than a wet flooded lead acid battery. So we're going to get this guy installed, but one thing you might also notice is, it's got some interesting charging specifications here, so they're a little bit more finicky, and in order to make sure that the battery is charged all the time, I am going to go ahead and also install onto it permanently a multi-stage charger. So I've got this Noco Genius 1 charger. I actually use a larger version of this, a Noco Genius 10 for the camper van battery inside the van, but since this is just for the starter battery and it's going to hopefully be charged by the alternator a lot, this is mostly just a backup for when I plug in the vehicle when I'm at home. So we're going to get this guy installed, and then also simultaneously, while we're at it making all of these modifications, I also am going to install a AiLi 500 amp battery monitor. So here's a nice battery monitor that's going to allow me to see the state of the battery in terms of its level of charge and capacity, as well as charge going in and out of the battery. So that's the game plan. We are going to go ahead and replace that guy with all three of these items. So maybe before we get started, let's jump over and I'll show you the proposed wiring diagram of how we're going to want to hook all of these up. Alright, so here's the wiring diagram of how we're going to make all of the connections. I think it's probably easiest to start here at the battery. So as you can probably imagine, there's going to be a lot of connections to the positive battery terminal / post. So obviously that's connected to things like the 12-volt outlets all over the van. Also, it's obviously connected to the starter motor. This is what's going to be drawing a lot of the current upon startup. But more interestingly, I'm also going to have this hooked up to things like this customer connection point to power an inverter. Again, don't worry too much about that. That's probably the story for another video. And then this connection here. So we actually have to tap off the positive side of the battery and provide 12 volts going to the battery monitor shunt. So that's going to go to the B positive section, which is actually this green, two green screws right here. So that should be all the positive connections. I guess maybe we'll also mention, here's the battery charger. Here's the Noco Genius 1. So obviously we're going to have to hook up the positive side of the battery charger to the positive battery terminal. Now, the negative side of the battery is where it gets interesting. If you notice, you have to make sure that you hook up the negative side of the battery to the B minus side of the battery shunt. So nothing else should be connected. So only the battery shunt should be connected to the negative post / terminal of the battery. After you do that, what you can then do is on the P minus side of the battery shunt, so basically on the other side of the shunt, you can make all of your other negative connections. So that's going to be everything, including, for example, this starter motor, right? The starter motor, the van alternator, those will come back to that side of the battery shunt, as well as the battery charger, right? So the Noco Genius 1, its negative terminal is going to have to be hooked up to the P minus side of the battery battery shunt. And then finally, other connections, let's see, like for example, this guy right here, which is coming from any other negative loads. You basically want to make sure you collect all of the negative loads at the P- side of the battery shunt. This is just to make sure that we can effectively count all the every coulomb that's going through that shunt will be connected and then displayed out to the battery monitor to display via this shielded wire. So this is the I guess kind of quasi-simplified electrical diagram for just this project, right? So again, remember, we're only doing the starter battery and the associated battery monitor and battery charger. So you can ignore this kind of junk down here in the bottom right. In fact, you can ignore the rest of, you'll see this is a much more complicated wiring diagram for my the rest of my van electrical, and that's, again, like I said, a story for another video. When I get to it, I will post a link in the description below if you're curious about the rest of the van electrical. But for right now, we just want to be focusing on switching out the starter battery and then adding this shunt as well as the battery charger. So here's the game plan. Let's go ahead and see if we can mock this up in the garage to make sure this is all going to work before we drop it into the van. All right, so here's my mock-up in the garage. As you can see, we've made a lot of connections to the positive post of the battery. So right here, this is my my test dummy load. So this is taking the place of the starter motor and all the other stuff that the van, that this starter battery needs to power. So right now, I've just got a simple inverter hooked up to it just to basically draw some amperage, and that's hooked up to this electric heating pad that we will test out in a second. So again, all sorts of connections here on the battery, the positive battery post, right? Obviously, like we said, the starter battery and loads, as well as right here, this connection is for the battery charger. So we've got the Noco Genius 1 sitting right here, and I have set it to a 12 volt AGM, and as you can see, it is orange, so it is charging right now at 1 amp or 12 watts. The other connection that I've got is this this black wire that I made that, like we said, comes to the B positive connection of the battery shunt. So that basically just gives the battery shunt power so that it can power up the display. And then you notice, like we said earlier, the B- side of the battery shunt, that is the only thing that is connected to the negative battery terminal here, okay? So this way we can basically get all of the current that is going through the shunt, and this Coulomb counter will be able to keep track of all of it. So that's great. And then on the P- side of the shunt, we've got all of the negative connections. So I've got the negative connection right here. This is going to our, our quote-unquote fake starter motor, all of our loads, right? And then we've got a bunch of other negative connections, like, for example, right here, this is, again, the negative connection to the battery charger. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then coming off of the shunt right here is we've got that shielded cable which goes to the battery monitor, the display, right, for the battery monitor. And check it out, it's working, it's flashing. So that means, look, you can see right down there, we're at 13.2 volts and we are charging at a positive about 1 amp, right, which is exactly what this Noco Genius 1 is supposed to be doing. So great, we got 12 watts going into the battery. I'm gonna have to fiddle around with the capacity and set it appropriately, so ignore this right now. This 1% is not correct. It's probably got more capacity in it right now than 1%. But let's just see if this works. So for example, if I turn on some loads, let's simulate turning on the engine. So if I turn on this inverter, we should see this wattage drop. Well, right now, so what, we've got positive 12 volts going in. So if I flip this guy on, there you go, you see this thing go down to, okay, positive 4 watts, so I don't know. So apparently just turning on the inverter, right, this inverter is going to suck up 8 watts or something like that. Now, let's see if we can set this up. I'm going to turn on the heating pad to, again, let's simulate turning on the starter motor. Of course, the starter motor is going to take a lot more amperage than this, but this is just for purposes of illustration. Let's see if I can get both of these on the screen at the same time. So watch this number, right? So instead of, right now we're still charging at 0.39 amps, but as soon as I crank up this guy, this should go negative, so let's do it right now. Check that out. Look at it. This is looking perfect. See? We're drawing -4 amps from the battery. So, yeah, this is working. So the whole setup seems to be functional. So let's go ahead and turn off the load, right? And we should watch this guy come back up to about a positive 1 amp charge. So here we go. Turning off, 3, 2, 1. And look, oh, actually I forgot, and I got to turn off the inverter because the inverter's also taking some power. Let's turn that off. Yep, and there, check it out. Back up to positive 1 amp. So we are charging the battery now at positive 1 amp. So looks like this setup works. So what we should do is let's just let this charge overnight, and then tomorrow let's go ahead and throw all of this into the van and actually hook it up to the real starter motor. All right, so it wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but we've got the battery back in and all wired back up. So again, yep, here we've got our battery monitor shunt, and I've got the Noco Genius 1 charger plugged into my Shore power strip. Again, I guess if you're more interested in how I'm bringing in 120 volts AC into the van, feel free to check out this video up here where I describe how I added a Shore power connection. But basically, this is going to allow me, so when I plug in the van to a Shore power source, it will basically hopefully charge up the starter battery. So yeah, I think we've got everything wired up. Let's try it out. All right, so here we are sitting in the driver's seat. As you can see, key is out, nothing is on. Well, I guess technically I take that back. Again, the Ford system has, you know, things like, I guess the radio is operational, and a couple of these 12-volt outlets, I believe, are operational. As soon as you kind of open the doors. And here's the interesting part. Here's the great benefit of having this battery monitor. Now we can see, now I guess I'm not so surprised that that battery died. Look at this. I'm just sitting here doing nothing. And why is it drawing 4 amps? 50 watts. So I don't know if that's just literally the security systems or the computer staying alive. But that's actually a significant draw. I wonder if I lock the doors. This will be kind of interesting. Let's hit lock. Okay, and no, it's still sitting here at 4 amps. So yikes, that's quite a lot. Actually, if you look at this, I've already set the capacity for this battery. This is a 70 amp hour battery. And look at this. It claims that this is only going to run for 16 hours sitting here like this. And as you know, this is an AGM battery. There's no way, you don't want to get it anywhere near zero. You probably don't even want to get to 50%. So, geez, at this kind of a draw, if I'm just sitting here, in like 8 hours, I'll be at effectively a quote-unquote dead battery, or the lower discharge limit of what I want to get to. So yeah, I think we better make sure that this guy is plugged in all the time. Otherwise, this is going to drain your battery. Just sitting here. Okay, well, now's a moment of truth. What we should do now is let's see if we've got everything wired up and if we can start the car with this new system in series. The thing to worry about, I guess the only thing I'm a little nervous about is, as you know, this battery monitor, that shunt is rated for 500 amps. I'm not entirely sure how many amps this starter motor is going to draw. The battery, if you remember the AGM battery, I think it was like, what, 650, 700 maybe cold cranking amps. That's what it could put out. I'm hoping that we don't get anywhere near that, so we don't blow this shunt. But long story short, I guess we're going to see. So let's go ahead and put the key in. Okay, and then I'm going to zoom in, and I want to just stare here and see how many amps are we going to draw when we actually try to start up the vehicle. So let me go ahead and put it into the on position. Oops. Okay, so there we go. Got some stuff running. Okay. 11 amps in the on position. So now here we go. Get ready. We're going to try this out and watch the amps. We're going to see how many amps this starter motor draws on startup. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, that seemed like no problem at all. Okay, I guess I wish I had a data logger, but I feel like I didn't even see that go over 100 amps. I'll have to review the footage later and we could see if we saw something. Okay, now we're talking. This is great. Check it out. The alternator is charging the battery. It's fluctuating all over the place, but I mean, you know, look at this, plus 200 watts going into the starter battery, so perfect. I think if we drive this guy around a little while, I guess we would have no problem recharging the battery. But look at that, everything started up great. So it looks like this new battery worked. All right, I'm super happy. Obviously, we're gonna have to reset the clock and whatnot, but yeah, things worked awesome. I think this battery monitor is gonna be really cool. You can see how now as I'm just driving around, I can see if we're recharging the battery and how that's working and all this other good stuff. So now we have a lot more information on the state of charge of the starter battery. Okay, so let me go button it up and cover everything up, and we'll be back in just a second. So we saw earlier that even when the car was off, and in fact you can see it's off right now, right? There's no key in the ignition. And earlier the battery draw on the starter battery was about 50 watts, but luckily after about 30 minutes, it appears that turns off. So as you can see right now, we're drawing, yeah, nothing, 0.02 amps, basically 0 watts. So this is good. So luckily after about 30 minutes, it seems that all of those systems cleanly shut down, and yeah, the battery is going to last pretty much forever in this configuration. Now, that being said, what makes this interesting on the Transit is that if you were to open a door, so for example, let me come over here to this driver door and pop it open. And when I pop it open, let's take a look at this battery monitor. So let me open the door. There we go. And voila, look at that. Now all these systems come alive and we're back up to this 40-50 watt draw. So as you can see, we've got lights on, right? The radio comes on. These 12 volt sockets come on, the lights in the back come on, including this really annoying cargo light in the back that I'm going to talk about in a future video, how to disconnect. But long story short, this is going to stay on for about another 30 minutes. So you can see how this could potentially be a problem if you are in and out of the van constantly. Let's say you're parked at a site like a campsite, or you're working on the van like I was doing one time. I was working and going in and out of the van, opening and closing doors, and every time I opened and closed a door, it seemed like it would reset this timer on this 30-minute switch, and I'd basically just be sitting here draining, you know, 40-50 watts for a half hour every time I open the door. So there were a couple of times where I did kill the battery by doing that. And as you know, with some of these AGM batteries, if you drain it once or twice, you've basically killed the battery. So this battery monitor is really nice because it gives me some visibility about what's going on, and I'll know when I need to start to plug it back in to charge it back up to avoid damaging the battery. All right, so I've got the car on now, and let me show you. This is why I really like the battery monitor. With the battery monitor installed, I can really monitor the state of charge and what's going on in terms of the charge to the starter battery. So as you can see right now, I'm just rolling down the road, and the alternator is charging the starter battery at, you know, positive 45-ish watts, right? So this is great because I can monitor it if I, for example, start plugging in things. Let's go ahead and give this a try. Let me go ahead and see if I can, let's charge my phone here, and let me see if I can plug this in one-handed. This is kind of a little bit of a difficulty. Come on, and there we go. Okay, there we go. We're charging the phone. Here, let's also charge an iPad. Let's see, where's the connector? Oh, okay, it's down there. Again, let's see if I can plug this in one-handed. There we go. Now we're charging a couple of devices, and we can see that, yeah, that took up some of the alternator charge, but we're still charging the starter battery. I can even get even more, put a larger load on this. Let me go ahead and turn on my charging system. So this is a charging system I made that's going to allow me to tap into the car starter battery to charge the van house batteries, right? That LiPo battery that I've got in the back that powers pretty much all my other stuff, like my refrigerator, you know, TV, all that, refrigerator, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and turn that over to that and start it up. Okay, so now I should be charging the house battery off of the starter battery, and you can see that, okay, even with all of that going on, I've still got, you know, positive 30 watts going to the starter battery. So we're still in a nice healthy configuration where the starter battery is being charged as I drive down the road, and hopefully at the same time my house battery is also being charged. In fact, let's go back and check that real quick. I should be able to come back to my other battery monitor, which is monitoring my other this is my house battery monitor, and yes, look at that. So we're charging the house battery at positive 66 watts using the effectively using the alternator, or using the car's main starter battery. You can come over here and check, and again, yep, despite all that, we've still got, yeah, 20 watts going to the starter battery. In fact, just for giggles, let's go ahead and turn off my house charging system. Turn that off. Okay, and come back. And yep, everything is looking hunky-dory. So this is working great. It gives us a lot of good visibility on what's going on with the starter battery. And one thing you may notice is this thing is like flashing green. So flashing green means that it has a positive charge going to it. And you can imagine this is probably a little bit annoying if you're driving down the road in the middle of the night. You've got this flashing green, but that's actually very easy to turn off. If I just come here and push and hold this top button for a couple of seconds, there we go. It will just turn off, and you won't get the flash. So again, very versatile system. And now you can see that if we plug it into shore power, right, the battery charger automatically turns on and charges it up, as you can see, up to full capacity. And see, it's actually still blinking green, meaning it's still got a slow trickle charge going on. So the battery charger charged at about 1 amp, and then after a while, I think it backed itself off to this this 0.17, 0.18 amp maintenance charge. So anyway, this is pretty darn great. So I think we're pretty much ready, and the battery charger in this whole system is going to keep our starter battery in a nice, healthy condition. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, I also hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. Surprisingly, if you just scroll a little ways down and click on that subscribe button, it really does help me continue making these videos. And speaking of the videos, remember, the new ones come out every Monday, so I hope to catch you at one of these future discussions where we can all learn something new together. So, until I hear from you again, I think I'm going to sign off for now. Talk to you later. Bye.